We've got 10 different tips for how you can combine and redeem your points to make a trip work with a companion or a significant other or for the whole family. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, here with AJ. And today we're going to be talking about redeeming points as a couple, how you can book tickets together using frequent flyer miles, especially some of those scenarios where you don't quite have enough points to book all together on one program or round trip for two people. We're going to talk about how you can piece that together, as well as cover some news and updates from around the travel hacking world. How's it going, AJ?
Going well, man. Checking in from the very teeny tiny town of Harbert, Michigan. Right on Lake Michigan in Southwest Michigan, for those of you that are not familiar, not too far from Chicago. And you're still in the Ledge, right? I'm
still in Grand Ledge. Really nice spot that you're at. I'm a little bit jealous. AJ did the coast to coast once again from Lake Huron over to Lake Michigan. Hopefully I'll be joining you over there pretty soon, and we'll see if I end up getting myself into some sort of Brazilian visa scandal in Chicago at the consulate over there.
All right, well, I wish you luck. Last time I had to deal with the consulate in Chicago, I had to instruct them to just give it one more try to look for my passport because I claimed I wasn't there, and they ended up finding it.
Was that when you had to drive back in the winter snowstorm as well?
That was really bad. It took me, I was living in Kalamazoo at the time, which should be about, 2.5 hours from Chicago or so, and it took me 10 hours to get there. The roads were just, the traffic, roads, snowstorm. It was horrible, but ended up getting my passport.
Well, no chance of that for me this time. It's about 100 degrees here in Michigan, or at least in my house. So, all right. So show notes for this week are going to be at Couples Redeem. And let's get into some news and updates.
The first one we've got is the Point Break promotion at IHG Hotels. So we've got discounted hotel stays using your points until October 31st. There's a bunch of properties, so you're going to have to check out the show notes for a link to seeing which properties are participating. Really good deals. We're talking about nights as low as 5,000 points for one night, so which is a really good deal considering what some of these hotels will run you. Also worth to keep in mind that not all these hotels are in the best location, so definitely keep in mind. I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit deceptive. Big cities are really big, and that means that the hotel may not be exactly where you want it. So just do your diligence on that. But nonetheless, 5,000 points for a hotel stay at a nice property is a really good deal.
Yeah, and I've got another link that we can add into the show notes, which is Drew from Travel is Free has an awesome map of all of the hotels in the IHG brand.
By categories, right?
Yeah, by categories. And so the thing is with these points breaks, they're all 5,000 points per night. So if the hotel you want is on points breaks, it's 5,000 points. They are limited capacity, so if you see one you like, you should book it soon. Especially, there's a couple of IHG Intercontinental hotels, which is like their premium, nicest property. They've got like Holiday Inns and some stuff that's sort of middle of the road. But the Intercontinentals are big time hotels. A lot of times those will have paid rates as high as $400 or $500. And as I remember, there was like one in Mendoza that looked pretty cool in Argentina. There's a couple of gems in this, so if you're just not totally sure what your travel plans are, it's worth taking a look. And we'll link over to Drew's map so that you can actually see like if the particular property you're looking at is close to things you want to see or if it's far out. But certainly can be a big benefit. And there's two other things to keep in mind here. So points breaks is just for redemptions of points. But there's also, if you have the IHG card from Chase, they also have a promotion that goes through August 7th that's cash and points. It's a 15% discount on the normal rate. So if you don't quite have enough points to do all points breaks, you might be able to combine the cash and points deal. And I believe there's also a promotion to buy some IHG points through August 7th as well. So some interesting opportunities and definitely worth taking a look if you've got open-ended travel plans and are just looking to have a cool experience staying at a nice hotel brand without breaking the bank with your points.
Good point, man. Next one we've got is a monthly one, but because we're at the top of the month, this is really good to look into now because it is limited space. And this is Air France's promo awards. And we've got some really good ones for this month. A couple highlights. We've got Vancouver to Europe, 50% off in business class. And remember, these Air France promos are typically 25 up to 50% off. So if you see something at 50%, that's one of the better promos. Europe and San Jose, 50% off business class. And one that sticks out for any listeners that are going to Bangkok for the Dynamite Circle conference, we've got Europe to Bangkok and Saigon, 50% off premium economy. So that is a really common route for a lot of people in the Dynamite Circle to head from Europe to Bangkok. And the travel's got to be between October 1st and November 30th. So that definitely works for people attending the conference.
Yeah, and I triple checked the date because the rest of these promo
was like 1 month, right?
Yeah, the Vancouver to Europe and the Europe to San Jose, Costa Rica, those ones are travel dates of just November 1st to November 30th. Either there's an error on the website or there's a little bit of a differentiation between different regions. But I triple checked. The Air France site says that travel's good from October 1st to November 30th for the Europe to Asia promotions, which include the Bangkok and also Saigon. So those are definitely worth taking a look. The other regions that kind of jumped out at me, I just kind of went through and scanned to see which ones were 50% rather than the standard 25. And there are 5 destinations in Africa. I'm ashamed to say not a single one of them I could tell you which country it's in without looking it up. But there's some interesting opportunities for Africa, and there's 10 different opportunities for 50% off from Europe to the Middle East. So those are some interesting ones. Doha is one of them, which is interesting in the sense that you could potentially combine a Flying Blue promo award, do somewhere in Europe to Doha at a nice discount, and then use British Airways miles to book Qatar Airways direct from Doha to lots of other places around the world. So Doha is their main hub. And so that's kind of an interesting opportunity. I always think about if you're trying to transition from either Europe to Africa or Europe to Asia or India, that's a really good hub. So if you don't have enough, obviously you can't use promo awards that don't touch Europe. So you can't go from the Middle East to Asia, but you could potentially combine that 50% off from Europe to Doha and then tack on a British Airways mileage-based award on Qatar, which is a pretty awesome experience. I've done the flight from Budapest to Doha to Bangkok, and that was really nice. It's kind of a nice way to break up the travel times as well, because it's only 6-hour flights on each end. From Europe to Doha is about 6 hours, and then from Doha to most places in Asia is between 6 and 8 hours. So there's some nice opportunity. If you're going to be gutting it out in economy, it's not a 12 or 13-hour flight like it would be to fly direct.
Yeah, definitely clutch to cut that one in half, because once you get over 10 hours in economy, that's pretty brutal.
And nice airport as well, by the way. That's a
Doha's
pretty
nice
cool
airport?
place. Yeah, man. I mean,
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, they love spending money on flashy stuff. There's a giant teddy bear though that creeps me out big time, like a 3-story tall teddy bear in the middle. I don't understand what that's all about, but somebody can explain that one
Just
to
when
me.
you get oil money, you can buy stuff.
All right. So we also have JetBlue offering flights to Cuba. This looks pretty cool, man. I mean, I know a lot of the carriers are now opening up those routes, but it seems like they're ready to start a price war.
Yeah, man, we're seeing fares as low as $99 from Fort Lauderdale. And this is starting August 31st. So this is just under a month out. We've got other routes throughout the year. Looks like we're going to have New York, Orlando, and you can also use your points on this. It looks like right now it's going to be as low as 7,000 True Blue points. I'd wait and see on that, because typically JetBlue, I mean, depending on the price of the ticket, they don't actually have an award chart. But right now, what we see is 7,000 points. So if you got some JetBlue points, or if you want to move some Amex points to really save some money. But either way, $99. Granted, you got to get to Fort Lauderdale somehow, but that's a pretty cheap fare considering it's an international flight. Not many international flights are that cheap.
Yeah, I would say if you do have to position for that, there's not a ton of the big carriers that fly into Fort Lauderdale. Most of the flights are to Miami. And so, just make sure you take into account, I guess, how much it's going to cost you to position if you're trying to fly a different airline. To me, it probably makes the most sense to position with JetBlue as well. So you want to see what the all-in cost is to get yourself to Fort Lauderdale. The nice thing there, if you buy 2 flights separately, is you can spend a little time in Fort Lauderdale on your way. There's also an interesting thing. Somebody wrote into us a little while ago talking about the Silver Car promotion, and that Silver Car is in Miami. And so they're basically a rental agency that just rents Audi A6s. And I've been really curious to try that out. And somebody wrote in saying that they had sort of a missed connection situation where they flew into Miami and had to get to Fort Lauderdale and ended up just renting a Audi A6 and making the drive, which isn't super far. So that could be an option as well if you want to connect those flights together.
Does not sound too shabby. And one thing here, just looking at our notes, and I'm guessing the other airlines do this, and they're just using this as a selling point, maybe not knowing. I mean, but it says the fare comes with Cuban international health insurance. I would imagine that you can't. I mean, would it be possible to go to Cuba and not be covered? Is that going to be in some type of like visa on arrival thing, or that's kind of interesting?
Don't know. That is an interesting question, but because it's the free check bag doesn't surprise me just because it's an international flight, even though it's a short one. Most of the programs make their definitions that, domestic airfare they're going to charge for checked bags, and internationals they're not. So it'll be interesting to see. But either way, one of the good resources is the Star Alliance Visa and Health Information tool. So I can put a link for that in the show notes as well. That'll tell you for any destination based on the passport that you're carrying, what visa you're going to need, whether you can do a visa on arrival, whether you're going to need any specific vaccinations and stuff like that. And I know Cuba has awesome healthcare system as well, but you want to make sure you got some insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Next piece of news we've got here is if you've got the Chase Sapphire Preferred card, you might be targeted with $100 off a hotel discount. Like most promotions, there is a catch. So this is going to be with a $300+ purchase made from the Chase portal, but now is Enjoy 100. So if this is something that you may be doing, got a hotel stay coming up, and you are a Sapphire card holder, this is something to look into.
Yeah, man, we have not been doing well with our cards. I checked this one. I checked the Amex Enroll and Extended Pay option. I checked the Starwood benefit for getting 10,000 extra miles. We haven't been targeted for anything, but hope you guys are. It does seem like a lot of people have been, just based on the comments on the different blogs that these posts are appearing on. So do check it out, because it looks like a lot of people have been targeted. So I guess they just don't like us, man.
Yeah. And final piece we got here is we've got a new Singapore route. Singapore bringing it strong with another fifth freedom.
Yeah. So it used to be, I think this is actually replacing the Houston to Moscow flight, which was one of those kind of random and weird ways to get from the US to Europe, or get even from the US all the way over to Singapore. I'm pretty sure that by the time this route starts up, they are going to have eliminated the Houston to Moscow route. It just looks like the oil revenues are not holding that one up. So they've canceled that, just like they canceled the Sao Paulo to Barcelona. But it is really nice to see that a replacement route has come in that's going to transit in arguably a much more convenient place in Europe. And this is going to be $57,500 KrisFlyer one way in first class, which is an awesome deal. Most other airlines are charging $50, $55, even $70 one way in business class. And this is for first class on one of the best first class products in the world. So if you've got plans to go to Europe, this is a no-brainer if it's available. And from what I've read, this is wide open right now with points. And keep in mind that you can transfer Amex and Chase and Citi all to Singapore KrisFlyer. So the availability is going to be way better if you book through KrisFlyer, and that's also the only way you're going to get the super cheap pricing. I'm pretty sure this is under $20,000 in economy. I think it's about $17,500 in economy. So if you're really trying to stretch your points and get more travel rather than more luxurious, this is probably going to be one of the cheapest ways to get to Europe as well.
Man, that's really good stuff. And like you said, talk about the product just completely blowing away the competition for, because I think American Airlines right now is at $57,500 for business class, which is good, but just doesn't even touch Singapore's first class.
When Gabby and I flew in first class, we literally shared one seat for like half the flight watching movies together. It's like a bench. It's enormous. And it's also only about 10,000 points more than business class. Business class on Singapore looks super nice as well, but it's a really small upcharge to pay an extra 10,000 points to go up from a cabin that's got like 50 seats. Business class usually has like 40 to 50 on those Singapore flights, and it's only 8 in first class. So it's way more private, way more elite.
All you big fellas out there, listen up. Get some extra room. Don't have to worry about scraping shoulders with people in economy class.
All right.
Man, I've got actually one thing I wanted to mention, and this was I was actually chatting with Ross, one of our app users on live chat today, and he was asking about the City Prestige's the free golf rounds they give. And I actually looked into this, and this is much better than I would have imagined. So they partner through some type of online golf search or booking engine. And these free rounds of golf that you get with the City Prestige card are like really, really nice courses. They don't have every nice public course available, but we're talking about places that are, $130 to $150 a round just to play 18 holes by yourself. And the City card gives you, I believe, 3 rounds a year. So if you're a golfer, you could be looking at saving, $400+ on golf alone by just using the benefit of the free golf of that card.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a ton of really good benefits. I'm really thinking about getting that card. Be aware that there is a cutoff with respect to the access to the Admirals Club. So they've done away with Admirals Club access, but they're going to give it through next July for people that get the card before September 1st. So if you're thinking about that and Admirals Club access is important, you do have to be flying American Airlines. And frankly, you already get Priority Pass, which has access to a lot of lounges. So for me, it's not a huge issue, but anybody that gets the card after September 1st is not going to have access to Admirals Club at all. So if you're going to make moves on it, make moves now. I'm not totally sure if that 50,000 point offer is still hanging in there. It was when I was talking to Ross about it a few days ago.
We couldn't find it. I did a little bit of digging, and I think we're at 40,000 unless somebody else there is holding on to a hidden link somewhere.
Yeah, well, that tends to happen when they pull it off the main website. Typically, you get 24 to 48 hours before they find all those straggler links. 40,000 points after 4,000 spends, still a pretty good offer. Not quite as good as the previous one, but with the benefits, you're looking at least $1,300 worth of airfare with that card. So it could be a nice choice if you're okay with paying $450 up front for the annual fee.
Yeah, man. Hey, what do you say we get into this core content? So like Eric mentioned earlier, last week we talked about points earning strategies for couples or people that share spending, because there's some different things you can do and you can take advantage of some different opportunities when you're teaming up with a spouse or somebody you share expenses with. So we covered the points earning last week. And so now we're going to talk about combining and redeeming your points to actually get on the flight and book travel with those points that you earned.
We've got 10 different tips for how you can combine and redeem your points to make a trip work with a companion or a significant other, or for the whole family. So these tips are going to be around how you can use points together and make sure that you've got a good strategy so that you can all get on the same flights and be able to save a bunch of money with your trip. The first one is pretty basic, but it's super important. You want to have enough points for a one-way for one person in a single account at the very minimum. And that is just based on the core rule that you can't book a ticket with partial points in almost all cases. So if the ticket costs 60,000 points and you only have 45, and maybe your spouse or partner has 15 or 20, you can't combine them like that. Sharing points between airline frequent flyer accounts is almost always a bad idea. They're super high fees. We're going to get into a little bit more about how the strategy works and how you can combine, but the minimum viable amount of points is to have a one-way ticket for one person in a single account. So that's the most important piece, and you want to try and get to that level with a couple of different accounts to give yourself more flexibility.
Yeah, the second part seems obvious, but this is something we get all the time that people forget about. It's use those transferable points to top up your frequent flyer accounts. So this goes directly with what Eric was talking about, have enough points in that particular account. You don't want to split the points. So if you got Chase points and you're short on United miles, transfer them there. If you're short on Delta and you got Amex, take advantage of the transfer partners to top up those accounts to get you at whatever the threshold or the level is that you need to be able to book at least a one-way for whoever it is you want to book with.
All right. Number 3 is take advantage of the loopholes or sort of exceptions for authorized users, spouses or partners, or household sharing to be able to get around those fees for sharing miles. And so what AJ was saying in number 2 is if you have transferable points, you can top up your frequent flyer account by just transferring some points to your own account. But when you're traveling with a partner and you're looking to redeem for 2 people traveling together, one of the biggest things that people overlook is that transferable points can often be moved around before you transfer them to the other currency. So, for example, with Chase, you can transfer to a spouse or another cardholder. You can move your Chase points and then transfer to that person's frequent flyer account. There's other carve-outs for other things. American Express makes it possible if you're an authorized user on the card. With Citibank, you can make a transfer to somebody else for free. It doesn't even have to be a family member. Those points just expire after 60 days, so you've got to use them soon, but that's not a problem. And then lastly, Starwood Preferred Guest, if you've had the account at the same address for 30 days or more, you can move Starwood points in between accounts. So those are 4 ways, one for each of the transferable currencies, that you and your partner could move points across currencies, essentially, to not have to pay those sharing fees. So in other words, just to take one final example, if I've got 50,000 United miles and I need 10,000 more, AJ, to transfer me 10,000 United from his United account to mine, United is going to charge a huge fee that's going to be hundreds of dollars, and it's just not going to be worth it. However, if AJ has Chase points and I don't, AJ can transfer me his Chase points, assuming we're sharing accounts and we've got authorized users on the same account. He can transfer those to me and I can put them in my United account. So look into those rules. We also did another episode in 131. We talked a lot more about the details of those rules. So check that out and be aware that there's an opportunity there to sort of move some points around using the transferable currencies to be able to top up more effectively.
Number 4 is knowing your transfer partners and your alliances. So this is kind of a 2-in-1. First thing is knowing your transfer partners. If you've got some of the transferable currencies, whether it's Amex, Chase, SPG, or Citi, be conscious of the big programs that you can transfer those to. So Amex, we know, can go to Delta. Chase, we know, can go to United. SPG can go to American. But there's some ones that you might not be aware of, like Amex can go to Aeroplan. Chase can go to British Airways. Citi, Amex, SPG, and Chase all go to Air France, and Citi, Amex, SPG, and Chase all go to Singapore as well. So being conscious of where those points can go, whether it's to top up your account or just to move them all to that account and book travel. And the next thing is understanding the alliances. So we've got SkyTeam, Star Alliance, and One World. And you can pretty much rely, once you move your points into one of those alliances, a program in one of those alliances, you can use their partner airlines. So, with Delta, you can hop on an Air France flight. With American, you can hop on an Air Berlin flight. And the final thing on that that's kind of tricky, but when you're ready to book, if you're having trouble, you may want to do a quick Google search, is not all the availability is going to always show up in the program's website you're looking for. So an example is if you got American Airlines points, or let's say you had SPG, transferred them to American, and you're having trouble finding availability to Asia, go over to the partner British Airways website, and you'll be able to find availability for flights that you can actually use those AA miles on.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to mention about this, because this goes back to number 1, where I said it's really important to have enough miles for a one-way for one person. And one of the big reasons, you're like, of course, I want a one-way for 2 people, right? We want to travel together. And so a really important thing to consider, you mentioned at the top of this one, Amex transfers to Delta. Okay, so knowing your transfer partners is key, but Delta is in SkyTeam. And so if one person has Amex, they can transfer to Delta, but you can also book the same flight on a Delta operated flight. So you're flying on a plane owned by Delta. You can book that with Air France Flying Blue. And Air France is a partner of Citibank. And so that's why the one-ways can work together. If AJ's got 30,000 Amex and I've got 30,000 Citi, I can transfer to Air France and book a flight on Delta, and AJ can transfer Amex to Delta and book a flight on Delta. So that's why the alliances are super important, is you want to make sure you understand if you're transferring those points to an airline program, that airline can generally book on all of its alliance partners. So another example there is Amex to Aeroplan is really useful to combine with Chase which can be transferred to United. The prices might be different. So it's possible that you pay 50,000 United miles and the other person has to pay 65 or 75,000 Aeroplan miles. But the nice thing is you can fly on the same flights. So that's super important. And we'll include our master resource, which tells you all of the different programs that can transfer from the transferable currencies and which alliances there and what other airlines they can book on. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you guys trying to piece these together. And keep in mind, you can often combine one-ways using different currencies and still book the same flights to travel together.
Number 5, there is some extra planning needed for aspirational redemptions. What do we mean by an aspirational redemption? Let's say that you've seen Google images of Singapore first class and you are just hell-bent on taking a Singapore first class flight from wherever it is you are to wherever you want to go. It's important with some of these really nice first class products or really nice airlines that the devil is in the details. So for example, Singapore, Star Alliance, it's a partner United, but you might not know that you can't actually book a Singapore first class flight with United points because Singapore does not open up their first class and business class to their partners. You have to book that through them. So that means you got to figure out a way to get some of the transferable points unless you have some KrisFlyer miles, and you got to figure out a way to get the points into Singapore. Another example would be Lufthansa. It's a completely different game with their availability in their premium cabin for their own members versus their partners like United. They've got much more availability. So that's something to keep in mind, that they're a transfer partner of SPG. There's a couple cards out there floating around that you can earn Lufthansa miles. So if you've got an aspirational redemption in mind, you really want to double check that you've got the right plan around it and that your points are going to be able to do for you what you think they will. Because like I said, in the example of Singapore and Lufthansa, it's a little bit different than how the partnerships normally work within the alliances.
Yep. And I mean, it's technically possible. It's not that nobody's ever been able to use United miles on KrisFlyer or on Singapore. It's just that they give so many more seats away to their own members. And so if you have something specific that you want to do, there's certain points that are going to be easier for it. A couple of other aspirational ones that are just sort of worth mentioning. Etihad is a great airline. They're based in Abu Dhabi. They are partners with American. And for the most part, you can use American miles to book Etihad guests. So that's one of the ones where there is another partner airline that has pretty good access to availability. It's still a lot easier if you're only traveling with 2 people rather than a whole family or something like that. The other one that lots of people talk about is Emirates. They are partners with Alaska. The rates went up big time. So it used to be 70,000 points, and now it's like 110 in first class. If you really want to fly Emirates, it's worth maybe spending a little bit extra time and saving up enough points. The other airline that's got an incredible first class experience is Cathay Pacific, and they're actually one of the ones that's easiest to book with partner miles. So you can use American pretty easily, and you can also use Alaska pretty easily on Cathay. Depending on where you're flying, there could be some awesome opportunities there. And unlike the Emirates chart that went way up with Alaska, Cathay Pacific is still hanging out at 70,000 points in first class. So those were probably the ones that we get asked about the most: Singapore, Lufthansa, Etihad, Emirates, and Cathay. All world-class, top-notch airlines. And just, do a little extra planning, be patient, spend some time saving up those points, and be aware that sometimes you want to have points in the airline's own frequent flyer program to have access to better availability.
Number 6 is availability can change the amount of miles needed. This isn't something you're always going to run into, but don't be confused if, let's say you're booking, Delta's a really good example because they have more dynamic pricing than just a straight award chart. If you go to book, flight 1 and you're seeing that it was 30,000 points or miles, and then person 2 is going to be 37,500, that is unfortunately not a glitch in their system. That just has to do with most likely Delta saying we've got less space available. That means space is scarce. That means we can ask for more points, and we're probably going to charge more money as well. So the availability can change the amount of miles required. And this is something that I've personally seen, keeping an eye on Delta availability to Medellin. And I've seen the points go up a little bit. And that's something I need to keep tabs on and book quick. It hasn't gone up a whole lot. But we're talking about 7,500 points for both economy and business class has jumped up. So before it goes up much higher, I probably need to nab that. But that's something to keep in mind. And that's pretty much based on the availability, based on the amount of open seats they have and what they think they can sell.
And one thing that you can do to work around that, you're not going to get around the fact that they want to sell the second ticket at the higher price. But often if you try and search for two tickets together, they'll charge you the higher price for both of them. So in some cases, you're going to save some miles by booking the itinerary separately. The risk in doing that is that if you book them on separate record locators, you're going to pay a change fee for both people separately. So you got to kind of weigh the difference. Like if it's only 5,000 or 7,500 extra miles, is it worth the insurance that if you do have to change or cancel your flights, you're only going to pay one change fee because they're together? With Delta's example, Delta actually charges a change fee per ticket. So it doesn't really matter in that case. But if you see that price changing when you add a second person, you might want to buy the first ticket and then buy the second ticket separately. You'll generally get that solo ticket at the lower price first and then not get doubled up on both of the tickets. May be able to save a few thousand points that way.
That's a good point, man. I've actually never even thought about that.
Well, hopefully we can figure out how to get to Medellin without both paying extra miles with Delta. All right, number 7 is that partners are almost always at saver level, but some airlines have different charts for partners. So first of all, the thing to think about with what AJ was talking about with Delta, if you are booking Delta flights with Delta miles, they are crazy good at manipulating the prices based on demand. So you're going to see all kinds I think they have like 7 different tiers at this point of prices. So you could see prices, that vary by 20 or 30,000 points based on what tier of the award it is. However, if you're using Delta to book on Air France or any other SkyTeam partner for that matter, you're generally going to see saver rates. Same idea, American will almost always have the lowest price in points that's possible if you're looking at Cathay Pacific flights or Air Berlin flights. So using partners can be really advantageous in that sense. American has the same kind of idea with Delta where they have anytime awards that they'll charge you twice as many points for an American flight, but they'll give you sort of last seat availability. It's generally not a good deal unless you really, really have to fly on that specific date and you don't have any other options. The caveat to that point of using partners is that some airlines do have just a separate chart for partner airlines. So United's an example where if you fly in business class to Europe, you're looking at 50,000 or 55,000 points. But if you're flying on Lufthansa or some other partner airline, you're going to pay 70,000. And so it's still saver, it's still sort of the lowest tier possible. But in that case, you can actually save some money by flying on a United operated flight. And the last one that I wanted to bring up, because this one is even more stark of a contrast, is that Singapore charges way, way less for their own flights. I remember taking a look at a Singapore flight that was international. It was from Asia. I think it was from Tokyo to Los Angeles. And the Singapore flight was like 30,000 miles in economy. And if I just added like a 2-hour flight from Los Angeles connecting to Austin, Texas, it was going to go up to like 60,000 miles. So you got to be really careful. Sometimes it's not worth combining partners. So take a look at both options, see what it's like to just book on the same airline as your frequent flyer program, see what the price comes out to for that, and then look at options for adding partners and see if you can potentially work your way around and get some cheaper flight prices.
That's good stuff, man. Number 8 is don't be afraid to look for one-way flights for 2 people, so not round trips. In this hypothetical, let's say that you've got some American miles and you got some Delta miles, and you and your significant other want to head to South America from, say, New York. If you split it up into 2 one-ways, you could actually find a better itinerary, maybe find a better deal, maybe have lower taxes and fees. Because the odds of a round trip being exactly on the dates you want for a good deal is much less than piecing together 2 one-ways. So let's say American and Delta both look exactly the same heading down to South America. So it doesn't seem like a big deal which one you book with. But coming back, there's only availability on American. That means the right play is head down there with Delta and head back with American. So this is a really nice way where if you've got different types of points, you can make your availability a little bit more open by being able to pick the best one way down, pick the best one way back, or ultimately put yourself in a situation where you can complete the itinerary because one of the legs may be struggling with availability. So you just kind of play out the scenarios and you pick the best deal.
Yeah, super good point. And the other place that this comes into play is if you don't have enough points with any particular program or with any particular alliance. So in other words, if you do this one-way strategy, fly together one way down and together one way back using a different type of points, it means that, so let's say standard pricing for the US to South America is 30,000 points. So you and your partner only need 60,000 in one program. So each of you could have 30 or one of you could have 60. That's enough to book two people on a one-way flight together. And then if you've got the other points over in Delta, in other words, if you want to do it all on a round trip itinerary, the only way to do it is if you have 120,000 points in a single currency so that you can book the round trip. So it's a nice thing to do. Like a lot of times when you're signing up for cards, it's pretty hard to generate 120,000 miles all in the same program, but it's a lot easier to get 60 of each, knowing that you can combine one ways and make that round trip happen.
Number 9 is controversial. Some people may completely disagree with this, but we're going to toss it out there as an option. And that is consider splitting up on travel day. So this is mainly for the families. Let's say there's 4 or 5 people traveling together. The tough luck and the tough reality is that it's tricky at times to get 5 people on the same flight using points, especially if it's business or first class. It's really tricky. So if you are willing to have mom and dad or chaperone 1 and chaperone 2 split up and take their respective smaller tribe with them, this is something really to consider, especially, I mean, if you're thinking a family of 4, a family of 5, and you're going on an international trip, buying a flight versus, flying on different planes, you're talking about potentially saving, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000. Think about what that could do for the holiday if you're not just swimming in money. So that's something to consider, especially like we said, if you've got, business class aspirations. And some of these, like Eric said, I mean, shit, if you want to do Singapore first class and let's say you get a bunch of miles, I mean, there's literally only so many seats on the plane, let alone ones that you can use points with.
Yep. So maybe you can split up. The other thing is, maybe you can work it out. So if you're a family of 4, 2 people fly business class in one direction, 2 people fly business class in the other direction, the other 2 sit back in economy. There's ways to do it. It's generally relatively easy to get 4 or 5 people together in economy. It's mostly those business and first class awards. So if it's super important that you want to fly in a little bit more comfort, consider premium economy. Those also have some opportunities for 4 people or more. The other thing is just, you're trading off flexibility. If you you have a limited vacation time window and you really have to get the flights on those days, it can be worth, potentially splitting up, and hopefully you don't run into a situation where one of the parties gets delayed. But I definitely know that some people have opted to do that when faced with saving $2,000 or $3,000 extra dollars instead of buying the tickets. And that brings us to number 10, combine paid tickets with award flights. This is another really good tip for family, especially if you just heard number 9 and thought, no way are we going to risk missing part of our vacation because we don't arrive at the same time. So if you do insist that everybody's got to travel together, one way to go where you're still saving some big money is to have a couple of people book award tickets and a couple people book paid tickets on the same flight. And so that does sort of bring in a little bit of an extra challenge in the sense that if you want to fly together, you need to not only look for award availability, but look for award availability on flights that aren't ridiculously expensive. And one of the tools that I would recommend is using ITA Matrix, which is the engine that runs Google Flights, but it's way more specific. So if you need to look for paid flights that are an exact itinerary, ITA Matrix lets you piece together the individual parts really well. It is true that you can't book directly through ITA Matrix, but I believe there's actually now a new service that does let you just paste in the URL from once you've found it. So the advantage there is once you've verified that you've got award tickets, sometimes you're not going to necessarily see the exact same route on Google Flights or see it on Expedia or one of the online booking agencies. So ITA can make it possible to sort of piece together and say, okay, we need this exact flight number, these exact dates to be able to make sure you're buying the same ticket as you've got the award. But that's a pretty good way. A lot of times you can save a couple $1,000s for the people that are booking with points and pay for a couple tickets, 1 or 2 tickets, and get everybody together. The last tip for doing this one is if somebody's going to have to buy a ticket, have the person who already has sort of a base of points in the frequent flyer currency that you're going to credit the flight to. So for example, if you're flying American Airlines and 2 people in the family are using points and 2 people in the family are going to buy tickets and you're pretty sure you're going to credit those flights to American, you want to have the people that pay for the ticket be people that already have balances with American Airlines or have points that can transfer to American like SPG, because that way, at least the points you earn for the flight, often an international itinerary is going to get you somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 redeemable miles. That by itself, if you have the kids who have no frequent flyer accounts or don't have access to credit cards, if they're the ones who get the paid tickets, then they're going to earn 3,000 to 5,000 points, and those points are stranded. They're not going to be able to use them. So if you've got a situation where you have to buy points, have the person who pays for the ticket be someone who also has some points already in their account so that you're less likely to strand those miles that you're earning with the flight.
That's really good stuff, man. One final thing I would like to ask the listeners to do is for any couples or joint travelers out there, please let us know if you think we missed something. Let us know if you got a question. We've got a very, very, very educated group of listeners that do some pretty cool stuff with points and miles. So if you've got some tricks out there, please let us know what your strategies are for booking with your significant other, your travel partner, or your family.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Again, all of the links and notes for the episode are at abroaders.com/couplesredeem. And AJ and I will be back next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard, wherever you are. Travel safe.
Cheers.
Hey, Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback